I'm delighted to welcome all of you on behalf of our platform IndusGuru to our monthly series of expert events, Backpacking Through Life. While many of you know our network and are part of our expert network, there are a few of you today who are new to us, some of you have been engaging with us as clients, some of you are expert consultants who are new to the platform. So to start off with, let me just say a few words about our platform IndusGuru, so that you know what this is all about and about the session today. We formed a network, IndusGuru Network Partners, 6 years ago with the mission of connecting senior independent professionals to project opportunities and roles. Today, we are about 1,300 senior professionals on this network across a range of 6 different functional domains and 30 different industries. We connect our professionals to opportunities with consulting firms, with large corporates, with small and medium enterprises, startups, and nonprofits. Today's session is part of what we call our Beyond Work series. It's a professional networking expert session every month. We typically invite one of our experts to address the group on a topic of broader and interesting relevance to all of us. So this time, really excited to have Sridhar with us to talk to you about a session which explores the search for professionals for meaning, purpose, and relevance. Today, a lot of senior professionals are exploring, after many milestones of success and achievement in their corporate career, they're searching for what they would do in their second innings. And IndusGuru is at the vantage point where we have talked to hundreds of such experts over the last few years. We find some common themes in them as they look for meaning in their second career, and that ranges from teaching, investing, volunteering, and also starting up a new venture for that matter, and of course consulting and advising. So many of you choose that path really that gives you the most meaning and relevance. Today's session is crafted with just that purpose in mind. We are sharing one such journey which will hopefully inform and inspire other journeys. Thanks, Sridhar, for being with us today. And let me, with that, hand over to Ruben to talk a little bit more about our session and introduce its objectives. Over to you, Ruben. And thanks, Sridhar, again.
Thank you, Deepak. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our 4th networking event as part of IndusGuru's Beyond Work initiative. Housekeeping point for everyone before we begin. Please feel free to put in all your questions in the chat box. We will pause at a couple of points during Sridhar's presentation and give time for questions. We have also budgeted some time at the end for a more freewheeling conversation with each one of you. Moving on behalf of Team IndusGuru, I'm thrilled to welcome a TEDx speaker, Sridhar, at this event, who's all set to share his journey of backpacking through life, his stories of being a lifelong explorer, and about finding fulfillment, purpose, and the life beyond work. Sridhar will tell you more about himself. But let me take this opportunity to speak a few words on the session. Sridhar will share with us the why and how of his backpacking journey, his motivations, inspirations, and the discipline that keeps him on this path. Like all of you, he has been a consultant in his early corporate life and more recently as an investor. So there is more to this session than just backpacking and travel. In Sridhar's eyes and mind, it becomes an allegory for our professional and personal journeys. So he will also share his learnings and reflections and questions for each of us to ponder about. Ladies and gentlemen, would request you to join me in welcoming Sridhar. Without further ado, I request you, Sridhar, to take over and start this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruben, and thanks to all of you. Hi from Pune. I'm actually from Bombay, but I made the trip through the highway today. A request to all of you who can put on the cameras. If you can put on the cameras, it makes me feel better. Otherwise, it looks like I'm staring at a funeral. So it would be lovely if you can put on your cameras and I can see your beautiful smiles and faces. An honor to be speaking here. And I hope over the next 60 to 75 minutes, I provide you a lot of entertainment, fun, and hopefully some learning on my journey through life. So Ruben, if you can quickly share the screen. So the objective of I'll introduce myself later after setting the objectives of the session. What I would like to do over the next probably 45 minutes to 60 minutes is to inspire you to adventure more, both geographically and otherwise. And I would think most of the people attending this session would be about 30 or 40, but it's never too late to start doing that. I would also like to instigate you to live life with much more thought and passion, and also outside the box. I'm sure a lot of you are looking for second careers and would like to provide thoughts on how not to make the mistakes of the first one. Uh, to also provoke thoughts. Most of you would be consultants and with interesting clients and trying to add value to them. Would like to provoke thoughts that would help your business. And I'm also very selfish in my own way. I learn a lot from you and your questions. And last but not the least, have fun. I've structured this session into two sections. There is the one which is the what, why, and how of my backpacking journey, and then I've done a couple of slides of what would be relevant for you as a consultant from a very consultant point of view. I've been doing this session now for probably this is the 250th or 300th time I'm doing this session, and it's been for different audiences. I speak about 8 languages. I promise you the session will only be in English or in Hindi. I'm putting on an accent this because that's the only way I can train my brain to speak a little slowly. I've been divinely blessed to have my brain processing stuff faster than my lips can do. Most humans tend to think after they speak. So I put on an accent mode to slow down. The feedback from the audience is this session over the next 45 to 60 minutes is more like a drone attack. It has multiple vectors, but it's deliberate. It's deliberate. I wanted to share various facets of the journey, and it's an hypothesis that was at least one of them will stick and probably inspire you to do. It will at times would seem like a Bollywood story, but trust me, it has been designed with a lot of thought, intent, and experience in doing the session. So bear with me, and as you go along the session, you should start seeing the theme and the trend. Bollywood has some interesting concepts because the story never seems to gel, but they also have something called an item number. So I've also introduced item numbers into the session. So Ruben, if you can start off with heating up the session by providing some heat into the session and warming the audience up. Thanks, Ruben. I presume these are sites which even probably Bill Gates or a Warren Buffett or or an Ambani would never get to see. You get to see that when you backpack through life. This is Mount Pacaya in Guatemala, and I backpacked this mountain probably about in 2010, about 12 years back, and only backpackers dare to go there. And this is a phenomenal journey of seeing the earth coming up in such a fashion. This volcano actually erupted after 2 years, and it shut down the entire country. Interestingly, when I posted this video on Facebook, one of my friends commented and researched and said there were dacoits down on the way down. It actually takes a 6-hour ride up and down, each way. And I remember what I told her. I at least bothered about the dacoits. I'm really glad to have seen these sites. Uh, so going on, and I'm not able to see the screen, so a little bit struggling. So I'm going to be talking about destiny, and I would like to ask the audience, and if somebody wants to volunteer, as to how many of you believe in destiny? If you can put it on the chat box, which I can't see, Ruben will have to help me. So it would be very interesting to get your own thoughts about destiny, whether you believe in destiny at all. And my tryst with destiny started actually at the age of 11. I was a guy who would Mehek says yes. Okay, now can see the stuff. Anybody else who believes in destiny? If you can put on the chat box, it'll be more lively. If you want to speak up or chat off, it'd be really lovely. Bhumika says she believes in destiny. Anybody else?
Yes. Two more replies. One from Purav Sheth who says no, and our consultant Rajesh Uddoji who says yes.
Perfect. And the second question that comes in is, if you believe in destiny, can you change it? And does my life have a purpose? So I will talk through my own tryst with destiny. I still don't know, and I'll answer whether I believe in destiny at the last slide. My tryst started with connecting the dots in life. Started when I was 11 years old. I was almost being restricted from school. I was being chucked out, and I was being brought up by my grandparents. And I went to my grandparents, as usual, and as it happens in most Indian families, they took me to this here, who was the Kanchipuram Sankaracharya. And I still remember that dingy room. The older Sankaracharya was listening to my grandmother in Tamil, and he said two things. One, he said, this boy will travel more than 100 countries. And the second thing, he looked at me and he said, you study well, you'll do well. And I still remember the look that I had on his face. I was probably about 11. And I said, this guy doesn't know anything. He doesn't know I'm from a very humble family, and I'm going to be rusticated from school the next time. After coming back and after 30 years, I remember that session. And then these led to interesting thoughts on the way life is constructed. I also have done this survey with multiple people who've come into this session. And very interestingly, it's always about 60% of the people who believe in destiny. But they think, and 60% of people who think that they can change their destiny. There are about 15% who say that I am born with it, I cannot plan it, and there are about 30% who are always the cynics. And when asked when life has a purpose, it's again is that, and it's a very interesting bit. It's like 55% say that there seems to be some purpose, but I'm yet to find the purpose. There are these 23% clairvoyant people who say I agree, and again 23% who still think life has no purpose. Would be interesting to get your own thoughts clear on both these probably interesting out of the boundary questions as I start to introduce myself. I have been had a very interesting journey in life. You can go on to the next slide. I've been had a very interesting slide. As I said, I come from a very humble family, and very interestingly, I remember when in my eighth standard, my father had a fairly serious accident, which he took about 8 or 9 months to recover from. My mother came and told me that she needs to go back to work because there's no money, and I had to take care of 2 younger sisters. And in my 8th grade, I don't know why I decided that I would I would go and do my education from Ahmedabad. And I immediately went to the temple that was there next door, and I said, I went to God and made a deal, saying that whatever I do, I will contribute about 10% of my X% of my income to charity. And after that, it has been my target. So I entered IIM Ahmedabad at 19 years of age, and when I entered that, I realized what a stiff target I set for at that point in time for the divine. Post that, I've been in the business of trying to build various enterprises, both in the stock market as well as the private equity side. I've co-created sectors with many sectors with private equity as well as stock markets with multiple entrepreneurs. In fact, I worked in private equity from 1991, even before probably the sector was christened. Also have had a multiple divinely blessed journey across multiple nooks and corners. I've probably one of the few Indians who've traveled to more than 100 countries. You need to come back on the animation, Ruben. Yeah. One more slide. Sorry about that. Yeah. So been to about 124 countries. I've been to all of. I returned from Kyrgyzstan in September, so country number 124. Been to all the continents. I've been to about 25 Indian states. I have trekked extensively, including the Himalayas. I got into marathoning thanks to again a very interesting batchmate of mine in 2005. Over the last 15 years, I've done about 18 marathons, 4 full and 14 half. Latin American dancing, when I stepped out of campus, like every guy, I had this dream that I would have 2 left feet and swing every girl off the dance floor. But I, in reality, had 8 left feet. I went on and spent about 5 years trying to train myself in Latin American dancing with Sandeep Soparkar. I'm now in the last 2 years, thanks to COVID, I'm rediscovering the violin after 40 years. I've got a 100-year-old violin, again, serendipitously given by my great grandmother. One of the few humans who's done now 25 years of Reiki and meditation. I've been meditating almost every day for the last 25 years. Most people struggle to do it for even 5 minutes in life. For the last 12 years, I've been bicycling everywhere in Bombay, and been an interesting experience of cycling. I don't travel too much in Bombay, but wherever I go, I usually cycle. COVID has obviously changed that. Been mentoring and teaching from 2010 and done multiple mentored multiple more than 100 entrepreneurs and CXOs and individuals. For the last 5 years, I've been spending time teaching at these schools, and I'm now visiting faculty even at undergrad at Ashoka. I've written about 4 business cases and 4 more in the pipeline. And during COVID, I got myself certified as a coach. On the impact side, I've kind of set up 2 organizations. Usual Impact Advisors is a pro bono entity targeted at smaller and medium-sized social entrepreneurs. And India Impact Sherpas is recently launched. It is a for-profit consulting for the development sector. So if I was in IIM Ahmedabad, I was a classic introvert, and I would never have made this session. I would never have dreamt that I would make this slide. I'm also not a dabbler. I'm a loyal Virgo. In fact, I'm just still married to my first relationship. When we met each other in 24, and we've still been married for about 26 years. And I don't think, and I've never, the only regret both Vinayfar and I have is I don't think we've had a breakup. And I keep telling her that if we break up, then I'm in a problem. There will be men lining up for you, but I'll be single for life. But would like reactions from the audience as to the hypothesis as to why am I here? Why am I sharing the story with you? Ruben, does the audience have the mic, or do you have to put it on the chat? Will you just guide them?
So they do have access to that as well. They can raise their hands, but of course, for any questions, the audience can put in the chat box.
Let's just pause for about 30 seconds because I'm onto a full screen, so I'm not able to sense the audience. This week, so if there are any hypotheses that come as to why I am sharing my story out here, and I'm 0 and 10 in terms of introversion. So
we have one answer, Sridhar. Mr. Shashikant says karmic connection.
Wow. Okay, karmic connection. Anything else? Any other hypothesis? And Ruben, you can also, if there are people in the audience, you can call out people so that it becomes much more interactive.
Sure.
Anything else? No. And tell me when I can move on to the.
You can move on, Sridhar. Thank you.
So very interestingly, the reason I'm sharing all this is in 2005, I had gone into a little bit of a tizzy. At 35, I'd achieved almost whatever I'd set out on campus in terms of wealth and everything. And I went on a sabbatical, and people told me never to go on a sabbatical, and you'll never get another assignment. And I kept telling people that I'm from Ahmedabad, but you know how the fear of other people telling you, and one of the first few people who could take a sabbatical. So I decided that I would travel and do. I would inspired by around the world in 80 days. I decided to go around the world in 360 days. So I landed on all the 6 continents in 360 days, and I knew I had to build a story. So I started this site called Backpack Through Life, and I started sharing my snaps in an effort to prove to my future future employers saying that this was not something which was done randomly, but there was some learning from it. And once I started sharing the pictures, it was very interesting as to how my visa started getting easier, my experience started getting better, and suddenly I realized the power of sharing. And as time went along, it was very, very interesting as to I initially started traveling, sharing my travel experiences. Obviously, wealth was always shared thanks to my deal with God. But it was a very interesting bit of then I started sharing my network, sharing thoughts and whatnot. And over the years, I've kind of found out that sharing is the best multi-bagger investment that I can do. So that's why I'm here. But obviously, I'm a Jew. I am a Sindhi. I'm a good Jew. I can move on to the next slide. But there has been a theme as to why I'm doing each one of them. I'm doing each of them has been chosen for the reason that has been there. And if I look at the two objectives, till 2005, I was back doing all this to become a better investor. And after 2005, it was also added on another objective, probably more 2010, that I was wanted to become a better human being. And I will link back as to how each one of these elements have interestingly made me a better investor and a better human being. When I backpack actually and actually trek, I do understand global social economic trends, and that's why I travel to various countries for various like Brazil. I was in China in 2002. I was in Iran in 2014. Brazil was 2005. So interestingly, I could pick up trends and figure out what is happening to to India, and what would mean for my business of both private equity and share stock market investments. But in addition, investment is always about people. And I think consulting is always about people. It provided me an interesting and strong gut about people. Remember, when I'm backpacking, I've got a backpack on my back, and I'm traveling the country as if I'm a local. So I'm taking local transport. I'm eating the local food. So you develop an interestingly strong gut about people. The third reason why it would happen is that it gives me super people connections. Most backpackers tend to be the ones who are intellectually more curious about life. So over the last 15 years, I have connections. In fact, during COVID, I had connections. People were number 2 or number 3 to Fauci in the COVID side. Of people who were stem cell scientists, of people who are art surgeons. So you have super people connections who are very curious about the world. But last but not the least, as an investor and as an individual, it's always bias that murders your wrong decisions. And when you backpack, you realize you have to be constantly on the road, figuring out your hypothesis and figuring out how biases will affect your decisions. To demonstrate that, I'll pick up my favorite country, Iran. And usually I would have asked what people think when they think about Iran, but this is a survey that's been done from probably about now 100 sessions. And when people talk about Iran, they always talk about war, they talk about oil, they talk about radical. There's always some element of Islam that comes in. And this was what I thought Iran would be when I happened to go in 2014. Of course, my wife is also Parsi. I had an interfaith marriage, and I also wanted to see a fire temple. But that was one of the incentives. But when I backpacked about 25 days in Iran, this is what the reality is. Iran is a very, 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 very old civilization. The 5,000-year civilization. It's an empire which was built without slavery, because the Zoroastrian religion had good thoughts, good deeds, good words, so they couldn't do slavery. It's one of the most hospitable country in the world. So I remember my first night, and you need to go back. The animation is again struggling. But I went into the first night. I still on a bus, overnight bus. I still remember very interestingly. I got off the bus at midnight, and usually backpackers take up every bus, every stuff on the back, and get off the bus. This was a bus where nobody took out anything, and I was surprised as to what was happening. But later on, realized that this is a society built on trust and intellect. It's the only country to voluntarily bring down the birth rate. The women are only probably one of the most beautiful in mind, body, and resilience. And I would say South Asians and Ethiopians are the closest in a lot of sense. And it's only the priests and politicians who actually you see the media headlines. But in reality, I spoke to a lot of women in Iran, and I had to learn Farsi for various reasons. And I found that they were the ones who were mostly controlling most of the families and the society. And most of you would have realized of the headlines about Israel and Iran and how they are at war with each other. Very, very surprised to say that there were Jews in Iran, and I actually went to meet the Jews, and they said, "What is there? Iran is my country. This is all about politicians and priests." Last but not the least, they love the USA. So there's an interesting background as to why you would have seen chants about death to the USA. It's as in the Persian language, it's as good as damn in English. So when they say death to the USA, they would just say damn USA. So it's not in serious intent. Iran is one of the countries you should really travel to, and I've two other myth-busting countries which are very interesting. The other one is Israel, which is again a beautiful, beautiful country, and I had the opportunity to travel to it for about 3 weeks. And the third I would consider is as Ethiopia. Most people consider it as the one where people starve, but it's actually the cradle of the African. It's the granary of Africa, and it's a place where the Nile starts. Going on to pictures about and Iran, this is a very interesting. Most of you are aware, especially in Bombay, are aware of the Parsi religion. This fire has been kept alive for the last now probably about 900 years, and it's kept alive by the locals, but very few Zoroastrians there. This is in Yazd, which was the birthplace of the Zoroastrian religion. What you're looking at is Persepolis, and that lady is my guide, Berman. She's actually showing an elephant from India. And this is, remember, Persepolis is probably 3,500 years old, and it's very interesting. And you need to control back. Yeah. On the bottom corner, it is me standing actually in the triangle of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. It's about 100 kilometers away from Jalalabad. And but very interestingly, people would be scared to go there, but I found it the most hospitable people that I found going there. And Iran has some really interesting architecture, both in Isfahan and in various places. The mosque is something superb. So when I come back from Iran, I'm really, really like you went in with certain myths and you got out of it with a lot of knowledge. Happens to almost all the 124 countries that I've been to. And that's something which I really learned. Same thing happens with me with investments with people. So you always have some perceptions, but you figure out that data, and as you get more experienced, you change your information or your opinion about that. Next slide, please. The other reason I talked of powerful people, but you also meet people who are really on the ground, and these are the inspiring people. The lady that you're speaking about, thinking this is a 70-year-old backpacker who was moving around with a stick. She used to be a backpacker over 40 years old. She has about 6 children and about 30 grandchildren. It was nice to see her at the hostel and how she was so independent. I always dreaded not being able to stay in a hostel at 70, and she proved to me. It was so amazing how 18 to 40-year-olds were taking care of her, and she was spreading joy out of a lot of stuff. On the right-hand side, this is a flutist in probably Poland, and she's blind. And I went and talked to the shopkeeper, and she was saying, and asked her the story. And she is again from a fairly well-to-do family, but she still insists on learning, on earning a living and bringing joy to the world. On the right-hand side is a person of the Bombay Marathon, which I've met every marathon. I actually look out for him. And the family is the one which the family. I've met them on probably 14 of the 18 marathons, and phenomenal smiles on the family. The fourth one is a very interesting one, the one with the coconut guy. I remember I was young, arrogant in 2005. I was doing Ampi with a cycling guide, and I had gone for, it was a hot day. I wanted to go for coconuts, and this man was actually taking a long time to cut my coconut and give me, and I was getting very impatient. I complained to the guide saying how arrogant, no, how a customer unfriendly is he? And the guide immediately told him, do you know he's blind? He's half blind. And then I took a back seat and said, why the hell is he cutting a coconut with that? And he said, he comes from a very rich family, but he still wants to contribute to society. He still wants to earn his living. I didn't want to give him money, so I went back and probably drank 4 or 5 coconuts. And obviously, after that, I think the region around Hampi became much more richer. But all the four of them have given me a purpose in life, saying that if these people can figure out how to bring joy to the world, it is also important for any one of us to figure out our own ways of living life to the full and bringing joy to the world. You can move on now. We talked about backpacking. Marathoning was a very interesting one, and I've done full marathons and half marathons. Marathoning taught me as to how, and I used to be impatient before I started marathoning, and I used to start asking. As an investor, it was always 5-year plans. After my first full marathon, it became fairly very clear that business can't be run on a 5-year plan. So what kind of it moved me to is set up a 42-kilometer goal in business. But every time a marathoner does, he or she takes only 5 steps at a time. So it was very interesting how kind of made my way, and I usually do investments in large growth, how my entire theming changed in terms of how I constructed companies. As long as the theme was good, we would then move down to every month, every quarter, I would move. I don't know how many of you run the marathon. Hitting the wall is the sweetest thing that you can ever do. You can ever do. And I still remember my first time I hit the wall, and I rescued by somebody who was in the timing. And when you hit the wall, you realize you lose all faculties. And when you come out of it, it's just the muscle memory. I've unfortunately, not hit the wall again after my first, other than my first pull. But I know, and when I run every marathon, I know when a person is hitting the wall. I pay gratitude to the person who rescued me, and I usually have my tricks to get people out of the out of hitting the wall. Latin dancing and violin, very interesting again. And I remembered when I was climbing a kilometer-long cliff without a harness in Ethiopia. I realized why Latin American dancing is very important. You discover the center of gravity, and actually, when I was climbing, I found myself doing rock climbing much better. But when I came to business, it also was discovering that I needed to pivot and do interesting changes in center of gravity at various stages of the organization. In Latin American dancing, again, very interestingly, I'm an introvert. The guy has to take charge, so that is a kind of a discomfort one. And it was very, very interesting to me taking charge on the dance floor. And as I jokingly put, the Indian women are tough to control, and take them on a good ride on the dance floor. So it was a good experience of even overpowering the uncontrollable humans. Violin has been an interesting discovery for me over the last 2 years. It's a very tough instrument, and so usually said only for people who look for challenges will look for the violin. It's one of the few instruments without the fret, and you are using every muscle of the body. It helps. I've found with violin, it has owned the senses. And interestingly, I used to speak much faster than I'm speaking now. It helped me dam my thoughts a little bit, and it's much more slower and nicer because that's what the violin does, right? It kind of using all your senses to play the violin. Meditation has been an interesting journey. It takes about 10 years. It's like marathoning. It takes about 10 years to get your what they say is the energy right. But it has provided me now the seventh sense of pattern recognition. So for me, human beings, the voice, the way they speak is all about patterns. It also investment is all about patterns. Life is all about patterns. So it has given me an interesting seventh sense of pattern recognition, which is important. I also discovered late in life that I'm dyslexic, so it's a phenomenal merging of two things. Makes one a very dangerous animal while doing business. It also keeps you obviously young in body and soul. I didn't have a single gray hair till COVID hit, and my wife was fairly jealous. After COVID hit, I do have a semblance of gray hair, and I'm glad for that. Bicycling, if you bicycle in Bombay, you have the survival instinct of being in the moment. Interestingly, I used to make all my decisions while bicycling in the morning, in and out, and that was a beautiful moment where you knew you were in the zone. It also helps you prepare for the unprepared. I don't know how many of you bicycle, but it's a phenomenal thing. After that, you're prepared for everything. So when COVID came, thanks to backpacking, bicycling, and all these things, I just pivoted away. From March of 2020, I was in a different zone. So you prepare for the unprepared and just be prepared for whatever comes your way. Bicycling also keeps me human and humble because I deliberately, when I travel from Bandra to Prabhadevi, I actually go through a lot of slums. And when you see that kid who's doing biological needs on the road. It doesn't matter how much wealth you have. It just strikes a chord on your on your emotions and your soul, and makes you more determined to ensure that probably in the next 20 or 30 years, others won't see that side. Mentoring and teaching, again, phenomenal payback. You learn so much from your mentees and your students. And I actually go now. I used to do B school last year. I went undergrad. It's even a more better phenomenal experience. Keeps you absolutely young in mind. Impact has been a very interesting journey. It came in after 2010 when I met Jacqueline Novadgrath of Acumen in 2010, and it's been a very interesting role in my life. All of us live a life of privilege, but as I started working with not-for-profits and for-profit social entrepreneurs, I realized the lack of power of zeros. Most of these people work at minimalistic salaries and also with such committed such low resources, but at the same time they have the passion and the focus for the customer. So I've kind of learned that fragility, the frugality and the fragility of life beyond what we experience as in the urban areas very well, and that probably made me a better human being. Also, it's over the last 7 or 8 years, as I've been giving much more and more away, I've suddenly serendipity was a word which came into my life in 1989 as I was preparing for my CAT in IIM Ahmedabad, and I was suddenly, most of my friends will say that that's probably the most used word that I would ever use. But I've discovered the true meaning of serendipity, saying that it has to be earned, it has to come from blessings, and you have to really share whatever you have to gain that. Can go on to the next slide. And Ruben, is this the point where we ask for questions?
No. So maybe post the slide, we could break off for the second video.
Fair enough. Okay. And the very interesting bit of all that is obviously one of the most important things is everybody wants to be successful, right? If I had the screen, I would have asked how many people doesn't want to be successful, and I would not have even a single hand. And again, from the probably about 1,000 people, I've asked people what is their definition of success. And success always usually comes down to 4 or 5 things. It comes down to money, happiness, family, financial stability, and whatnot. So this is the kind of range of words that come in. But it is very interesting that backpacking has also ensured that uh, I have devolved my own definition of success, and it has also evolved. So if you ask me what is my definition of success today, is now I'm in the business of inspiring role models in society who will go and change society. And if I look backwards over the last 30 years, that's what I've been doing. I've been going out and inspiring entrepreneurs to change sectors. I've been going out and inspiring students to change sectors. So for me, the measure of success is how many more such people I'm able to take them on the life journey and uh, make them think out of the box and change the world. But each of you will probably, if I were to go around the room, each of you would probably have your own definition of success, which is this four. But you will probably also have a unclear definition of success. 90% of the human beings search for success, but don't put metrics to that entire journey. Ruben?
Yes. Mike, if you could stop your screen share, please.
Really, apologies for this. I realize again, human. Hey, you don't have to play this. You have to play the questions, right? Yeah. That's if you started. Let's start. Okay, no problem. No worries. No worries.
So maybe we could break in for a couple of questions, Sridhar,
Yeah,
and then could do the video.
Then that'll be probably logical breaks. Yeah?
We could do the video as well.
I'm struggling with the audience perception, so I just want to ensure that people are not sleeping off. And I know it's a little bit off script, but I just want to just ensure that I get the energy in the room. Get a handle on the energy in the room.
Absolutely. All right, friends, we're opening the chat box. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them. So Sridhar, while we're getting a few questions from the audience, I can quickly ask you this one question we've prepared for you. And that is, how do you switch off from work while traveling?
Oh, interesting question. So this entire question of work-life balance, I've never understood this. Okay, and this is I'm honestly saying right from the age of 19. For me, there's been nothing called work. There's nothing but life. Life is work. Work is life. You whatever you do 100%, and you just go with the flow. And when you're having fun and passion doing what you enjoy, there is no challenge whatsoever. Most people also say that when you're having fun, you should not have challenges. As a personality, I seek for the discomfort zone. Each of these places, like backpacking a while, and I'm always looking for the discomfort zone. So for me, everything is work, everything is life. And interestingly, I've been working from everywhere. I run a fairly large private equity fund, but I've been working from everywhere since 2014. So even when I backpack, usually it's once WhatsApp got in video calls, I've been working as what humans call as work. But for me, everything I do is passion. It's like I'm doing it for the fun, and the fun for me comes from either sharing my discoveries of life with other people and transforming them, or me selfishly learning or whatever it is. So to my head, work-life balance is a myth. As long as you're having fun, I think there is no distinction. At the same time, what I do very importantly is you need to preserve time for yourself, right? So, for the last 32 years, I've always had a weekend curfew on myself, so that I will stop. And my brain works 24 by 7 on what work is, but I will always restrict my interaction with human beings. So for the last 25 to 30 years, weekends have always been curfewed for me, myself, and my family and my friends. Uh, I take off, as usually when I'm backpacking, I usually also am working. But over the last 20 years, I've actually learned from the Ambanis. I can usually shut down again this contact with the human world around December 15th, and then again surface only around Jan 5th. So I get my own time with myself. So, but I'm still thinking of work, getting my time, my thoughts clear, and ensuring that I don't get confused by too much human interaction other than close friends and family. Have I answered your question, Ruben?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Sridhar. We can quickly move in if we have any other questions. Friend, do you all have any questions? All right. We don't have any questions for now, Sridhar. We could play the video.
Yeah, I will tell you when to play the video. So just go into the how, and then I will tell you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Back to you, Mahek.
So the how of backpacking, and this is again I've kind of distilled and I'm trying to share my journey and my opinion. And each individual has to think of it, and probably it will be interesting how they think of it. I've always have been also a metric-driven person, so it's very important for any person to define what is successful. Is it money? Is it impacting other people and everything, or is it just having a good family? So it is very important to define what is successful. And most people, if you talk to most adults, they never chase their fantasies. Okay, and unfortunately, I read Ayn Rand Fountainhead at a raw age of 12 or 13, and since then I've been a morphed person. So I've always been dreaming my fantasies and chasing them. Interestingly, the fantasy to chase countries came in when I met my geography teacher in my 8th grade, and she used to take me into the pampas and make us dream about those places. In Bolivia or in Argentina. Instead, I should go and see them. So it's always important to look back and see what did you fantasize when you're a child and start chasing them. The second thing, I think there's no distinction between corporate and life. Right? If you're running a business, you will form a corporate strategy, you will do SWOT analysis and whatnot. The same with life. If you really look towards yourself, you can build your own life strategy. You can do your goals, your metrics and deadlines, and I actually do what is something called as a obituary exercise with the assistance of psychometric assessment with people, where people figure out their own personality strengths and weaknesses and figure out on their own life strategy. And one of the important questions I ask people to answer is, who is the customer of your life? Okay, and why are you living life? And I get very, very interesting answers, and most of them usually tend to say my first customer is my life, myself, and then it's family, and then it moves on to building something which is usually good for society. The third thing of defining what is successful, which I've really been about, is ensuring that your personal brand values and positioning are determined upfront. And it's again very interesting in the quest of success. People usually sacrifice their ethics and their values as they go along. Luckily, my own definition of integrity, thanks to various mentors, became very clear. So my definition of integrity, and I would presume all my friends will vouch true to that, is that I will speak my mind. Over the years, I've become a little more diplomatic, but it doesn't matter. Unpopularity or unpopularity doesn't matter to me. It will always be what I think will what I will be said. And each of you will have to define their own personal brand values and your positioning. The second thing is we have very limited time on this earth, and people say people say you're going to die tomorrow. But very interestingly, always maintained obsessive control on my calendar. I always have it's one thing which I've never allowed my secretary or anybody to have control. And every person I've met, as always, I've ensured that I can add value to them. And if they're meeting, they are ready with their asks and the value add that they can come to me. So it's been a fairly, it also leads to a lot of unpopularity, but as an introvert, it is very interesting how you can keep people away. The second thing is that to build scalability, and as a private equity guy, I've always been wanting to be scalable. But more importantly, it is for you to be able to outsource and delegate. And people usually only look at activities. I always look at even the thought process. So if there's something which I need to think about, I always will look around and see who's better than me at thinking it through. And I'll talk to 2 or 3 experts, and then I will form my own hypothesis and go around with it. So, in a lot of ways, I still remember even in the 1990s, I used to use the word bandwidth. And it was always, for me, the mental bandwidth. Your brain can think of only certain things, and you become very scalable when you control what you can think about. I've been always been my life partner always criticizes me, but I'm fairly cruel, and I will say this is not what I want to think about, and that's something that makes me scalable and probably more efficient. The third thing is you think about your legacy, and your legacy is a very interesting bit, right? All of us are going to die, and probably at 40 or 45, you need to be a little bit thinking about it. Your legacy could be just be your kids. It could be saying that I did something for companies, but start thinking about it, and it will probably link back to what you think is as what is successful. And very interestingly, people don't think about that. If you look at history, right? It's only people who are made a difference or can be who are different who have been able to be remembered. If you really think of legacy, if you look at your grandfather, I don't know what my grandfather did other than he was a farmer. And as you go above generation, great grandfathers and whatnot, you don't know where they came from. So only different people are going to be remembered. It's either Gandhi or Hitler or Osama bin Laden or maybe a Nelson Mandela. So it would be really good or really bad to be remembered. The second thing is very interesting, which I probably learned in Accenture. It's called the WIFM. Every woman being is selfish. So figuring out what is in it from me is, and when the me here is the audience is very important. And once you get into the customer obsession of figuring out wherever I am, where I should deliver value to them, probably life becomes much more easy. Um, quite a lot of you moving on to the partners in the journey of life, and this is probably very important. Most of you would have had the experience of doing that. I think there are 4 things that you need to choose very particular in life. One is the employers, and probably even as consultants, your clients. You're spending most of your time with them, and if most people crib about their jobs, and luckily I've not been there in that zone. But if you're cribbing about your life, you either change your employer or change your sector. Okay, otherwise you're wasting your life. Quite a lot of you would do business, and you would be looking for business partners. And my thesis when you're running a business is that you at least need 3 partners. One becomes difficult, 2 becomes nice, but not optimum. 3 is optimum, and after 3 it becomes this unproductive. So you need to be very clear when you do into business partners why you're getting into them, and it should always be a fun journey. And they should be people that you can like your as this current generation says, other significant others, the significant others. You should be able to disagree and agree. I would and have fun disagreeing with that. Probably this is not an audience for life partners, but we never know. But again, I think life partners and significant others play a very, very important role. The fourth item is mentors and role models. Very, very important. A lot of my journey has just been by mentors and role models and people preparing me for the path ahead. And I've been very lucky to find role models and mentors coming into my life. But I've made that effort to be in touch with them. So had mentors like Vagul or Shika Sharma or Girish Kulkarni or Sanjeev Chandani. So they've been a very interesting role models and mentors for me. But I've kind of latched on to them. Uh, the the sixth one is the conquer the fear of failure, and I find it very interesting. Two observations that I find of human life. I find it very, very interesting. When we were young, and I think most of us are in the generation where we played hide and seek. The funnest time was when we were hiding, and when we were hiding, we had all the fantasies and whatever while we were hiding away. But very interestingly, very interestingly, when you come to human adult life, we like to avoid the nooks, right? We always want the trodden path. We're afraid of failure, and it's a very interesting transition. But both when you're young and when you're now, it's the nooks and the corners which will always give you the maximum learning and your maximum fun. The second thing is very interesting, and more so in India, where we are all bothered about society, kya bolengi and whatnot. And most people actually broadcast their successes, right? You go and say, I bought a Mercedes, I bought a client. And I always find it very funny in society when you go and broadcast your successes, where you probably make only your close friends happy. But then most of the other people that we're hearing, they're probably getting jealous of you, and then they are getting they're creating sorrow in their lives, saying in terms of competition. An interesting thing which Shika Sharma always told me is always broadcast your mistakes and or never repeat them. So that's a kind of process that I put in, saying first time a mistake, second time a error, third time it happens, I really whack myself away to glory. And that makes you a much more efficient and scalable person. Last but not the least, I think one needs to internalize the inevitability of death. It's a very interesting zone to be in. I think Eastern philosophy always tells you dualism. So even though you live life fully, you're always going to die. So I always live. I'm going to die tomorrow. And it's a very interesting. As I said, you never knew what your granddad did as a career. And the other thing that I discovered at the age of 19 is such a minuscule part of this universe. As it is, there are 7 billion people. There are probably about billions of species. There's so many planets in our universe in one solar system, and there's so many multiple solar systems. So when I go to Antarctica or when I go to the North Pole, that's something which makes you very spiritual. I started off as a religious guy, but now I've become very, very spiritual in my own journey, thanks to many multiple experiences. And it's when you start knowing that you can die, you start living. And I'm very, very lucky. I was almost died on a trek in the Himalayas at 23, and I still remember it was a blizzard. And the next day morning, it was like, whoa, I could have died, and I need to live life again. I said item numbers, and Ruben, I would get you to play the video on the time that I actually died, but still came back. So.
Yes, just a minute.
My dream is to fly over the rainbow so high. My dream is to fly over the rainbow so high. Rise up, love time I broke.
So this was Serengeti in probably 2013. The most expensive tryst with debt I could ever do. I paid probably over $1,000 to experience this. But what I liked about it is we were all backpackers on it, so you were wanting the balloon to go. And as on the plane, the pilot had said, if we scream braces, we had to all get into brace. And lo and behold, he said brace. 30 seconds, we were found on a tarmac. And remember, when you're crashing a hot air balloon, there's no tarmac. You are actually being dragged on it for a kilometer. And the best thing that I learned about this is even when I was crashing on the thing, I was braced, but I kept my camera on because I said if I'm dying, I should leave something for society. But when I got out of it, I asked the pilot saying, "Why the hell did you crash?" He said, "Can you see that mountain?" And I looked at the mountain and said, 30 seconds later, if we not crash, you would have been dead because no rescue vehicle would have been able to come there. So I said, okay, that's the power of leading life. You can come back to the presentation, Ruben. So I'll now talk about, yeah. So it's always the time that and the dollar that will not. It's all the people say will I have money, but it's always the time which is the problem, and it's again comes back to your life strategy and what you want to do and putting a theme to it. And as I always believe, every human will get there if you will to. Otherwise, it will always be excuses or dreams or fantasies. Moving on to my 7 discoveries as a consultant, and be from a consultant. The first one is getting clients to pay for you requires different stories, your different stuff, and I've been an investor, which is even more tougher from the client. The client actually is paying you. As an investor, I have to convince my entrepreneurs that what I'm thinking is the right one. But I always found that it's always good to put stories and analogies and drive home your point. It's always good to backpack and excite them about your own life, so you get much more virtual sense. In fact, I still remember time when I was at 80 countries, and my entire board meetings used to go into saying, when are you hitting the century? And it was like Sachin Tendulkar going for his 100 centuries. So I still remember one time I said, this is getting sickening. I will just go and finish off the 100 countries. So I actually spent a year just getting to that 100. The third thing is hopefully in this session, it's always being different becomes very different. Always attracts and keeps you going. So provide what your clients don't have time to do, and most clients don't have the time to visit markets. They don't have time to go to customers, and they don't have time to read. And that's how you start building client headspace to limit you. Last but not the least, like with investments, it's a very limited time and resilience testing marriage with the client. So you ensure that you know the exit conditions and you keep constantly adding. The second discovery life, and from a very client perspective, especially after COVID, life is all about pivots, like Latin American dancing. Yeah, I'm sure all of you would have done a lot of pivots in your own life, and most of your clients and your customers are actually struggling to pivots. In fact, in this generation is very unique. I think our generation or the generation next used to have 1 or 2 careers. People who are graduating now will probably have 5 careers in their lifetime, and they will not have the choice when they will transition from one to the other. We're seeing COVID, so many industries have died, so many industries have come up. So life is all about pivots and change are always very difficult. So you and life has always become very crazy, right? It's always become better than yesterday. Most of you are glad you are off the corporate rat race, but then you have to make money by making your clients better than yesterday, right? And that you need to share your journey. It's again like investments, but always nice to understand their personal dreams, their values, their idiosyncrasies, and capability gaps. I always find, even as an investor or as a consultant, if you bring that personal angle to it and help them achieve their journey, it becomes a much more effective one. I've never struggled at the boardroom because always been saying what is your personal dream, and then the corporate dream comes along with it. And co-creation, it's always co-creation, right? It's always at various levels of the client. If you get into a partnership mode, a co-creating mode, I think probably you get more business. Life on the business treadmill, as you would have realized, and most of you are out of it, but it's become even more bad. It's become thankless, lonely, filled with politics, insecurity, and uncertainty. So you sometimes knew that and your clients have different level. You've got your organization, you've got your people, and people are different generations. probably you'll make much more money by understanding each one is different and giving a different avatar or a face to each one of them. Number three, I strongly believe I do courses on investment with these schools and undergrads. I strongly believe everybody is an investor and entrepreneur, whether they are on a job or own a business or they are consultants like you. It's always good to have an ownership mindset. When you believe that you own 100% of the company, whether you're a consultant or not, I think that there is always that bite that comes in. People sense that whatever you're thinking is always from the organization's perspective and the organization's customer's perspective. The other thing that's usually missing is customer obsession, and I always do all my investor thesis and everything from the customer angle. So one of the things that I always do is understand the value chain and understand customer behavior and figure out which are the investees which will make money. And one of the best things I've found that is that when you put the customer at the center of your discussion and say what you suggest is in the benefit of the customer, I think a lot of hangups and egos go away. Most discussions in corporate life, I understand the customer is never there in the boardroom. And as a consultant, if you start bringing the customer and say what you're discussing, how does it impact the customer, probably it leads to a lot of sanity in the discussions. Number four, can go is understanding human behavior, and that's very interesting. That's what backpacking provides me. I've suddenly realized that WIFM that I talked about is not a common skill. And the funny thing about decision making, which I discovered at the age of 19, is that it's extremely simple. Most people look around trying to formulate a hypothesis, or they get confused because they don't know which is the decision to take. One got very clear at the age of 21, saying the best way to take decision is quickly find a gut, formulate an hypothesis, and then go around finding data to negate them. Most people try to find data to both support or negate the hypothesis. I've always looked for data to negate them. If it gets negated, then you move on to the next hypothesis. So life becomes very, 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 very super simple, and that's how I make even stock market or any decision as to what I want to do. Probably I'm the fastest decision maker in any restaurant. I go in, find the hypothesis. I know the waiter has the data. I'll ask the waiter saying what I order is good or bad, and if the waiter suggests and recommends, I'm done. Most people spend hours figuring out what to eat. Again, life and business consulting is a very, very simple investment game. There are four matrices to it. There's risks, there's returns, there's investment, and mindset. And whatever you propose to the customer, probably if you put this into a 4 metrics, it's a very interesting game to convince them. And that's what I use even in the boardroom. The second thing I find is that most people forget the mullah element. One is that you translate any of your recommendations to cash in the bottom line. And I've not found a single client when you put customer obsession and client into the equation. The areas of disagreement with the client goes away. All the egos goes away, and he probably becomes a better investor and a better client, better customer, better consultant to him. And the interesting bit, I think all humans and all clients intrinsically know the solutions to that problem. They need facilitation or validation. And if you kind of prove to them that it's they who know the solutions, probably you can elevate yourself and your solutions to higher value chain issues because they kind of then start trusting you. Number 6, I think serendipity plays a humongous role. It's all about, in a lot of ways, it's not luck. It's just that what you're doing, and timing and resilience and flexibility determines all. Especially in the investment this field, you can wait for investment to give you 10x returns, and usually it's the 10th or the 11th year. Just losing the patience is when it starts giving you the returns out there. Last but not the least is that. It's a very interesting bit. We are all going to die. You are just the instrument. And I found in most people, hubris is the biggest enemy. And if you look back at life, its values and ethics, the biggest friends. And most people who are successful in convincing others or being loved by others, usually the values and ethics are very well stated and they're fairly transparent. Going back, next one, please. Getting back to the questions that we started, which is can you sculpt your destiny? My hypothesis is that life is a series of forks where you say yes or no, and it's a metric decision tree. It's an AI program in action, and it's fun. It's amazing how the dots are connected. Why did that shear have to tell me something that was that had to happen 30 years in life? So it's a very interesting bit. Some decisions that you take get you where you are. I've traveled around the world in terms of wildlife. Learn from nature. Humans are the only species which can be lazy and greedy, right? If a tiger gets lazy, he's going to be dead. If it gets too greedy, it'll fat and not be able to run. Humans are probably the only species which are greedy and lazy. So you should learn from nature and say that you'll be at your best. Power of faith of mind is something you'll always believe what you think, what you believe in come. And I discovered this when I was in Chile, in Atacama. When you look at the stars and if you look at at the universe, whatever you see is in the past. Actually, whatever you're hearing from me is a nanosecond in the past. Whatever you're seeing is a nanosecond in the past. Whatever you touch, it takes about 30 nanoseconds to go to your brain. So the only truth is there, what is there in your head, and that is what what Indian or Eastern philosophy calls as Maya. Last but not the least, it's very interesting that when the blessings, people usually look for money, but it's usually it is the power of sharing that gets you money. It always super multiplies if shared, it putrefies if folded, and vaporizes if you're not grateful for. And I've actually invested in hospitals, and the only thing that can help you is when you're in that in to get to an ICU, you have to pray that you get to the right nurse and right to the right doctor will administer the right medicines. Not even $1 million or $1 billion is going to help. It's just going to be blessings. And I've seen multiple cases where that can be very painful. What I would inspire you to think, and very interestingly, life is very dualistic. Whether you lead life with a purpose or not with a purpose, I guess it doesn't matter. But like with the cricket team, right? Most of you will recognize the cricket team of the 10 years back when they used to just go and play and come back. Now cricket is much more interesting because the team has some goal and goes and gets things done. My assumption is that your life is much more fun and more you're more happy and more successful if you take a strategic mindset to it. To end this session, next slide. I think life is extremely beautiful, and I try to capture 6 slides. The first one is Mount Everest, and I've seen it from base camp and seen from 3 sides. This is one from a flight over Mount Everest. Dead Sea is the lowest part of the world. Phenomenal session or phenomenal experience of floating on water. And that I presume that's how Jesus was mythologically seen to be walking on water. And the underwater is so beautiful. I do scuba. I forgot to mention that scuba across all the 6 continents, and the underwater is so beautiful. Northern Lights. I don't know how many of you have experienced. It's beautiful, and I've been lucky enough to see it across. And there is Lake Pangong, which is my favorite place in the world. Actually, I saw it in 2005. Now, I think thanks to 3 Idiots, it's become an idiotic place. And trekking in Antarctica, which is a very interesting, beautiful spiritual journey. I started this session with volcanoes. It's also time to cool down and open it up to questions. So, Ruben, can you just play the video of the glacier?
Yes. Sridhar, you're on mute. Just
Yeah,
in case
sorry.
you think. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Sorry, it's been a little bit interesting session. Getting accustomed back to a Zoom one, and this is how humans lose practice. So, thanks for being on the session and open to questions. I hope it inspires at least one of you to think differently about life and go and adventure, and most importantly, change the world. Back to you, Ruben.
Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you so much. Friends, we are now opening the question and answer session. In case you have any questions, we request you to either raise your hands through the emoji on Zoom, or you can put in your questions in the chat box and I can have them answered by Sridhar. Parallelly, friends, we're also launching a poll. This will help us for our future events. So requesting you to answer to the poll as well. Some issues with the poll, but we can quickly start with the Q&A. Sridhar, while we have our audience putting down their questions, I have a couple of questions. So one very important question, Sridhar, how has travel and experiencing new cultures helped you in your professional PE journey? If you could help us, or if you could give us one of your cases.
So interesting. There are two or three ways, right? I always choose my countries because it's economic or social or cultural. And two or three examples come to mind. One is China. I backpacked that in 2002, and I came back very impressed and depressed. I knew the China of the world, which the media was discussing, was not actually true. China was at that time about 20 years ahead of the world. I used, before COVID, used to go back to China every year, and it's now probably 50 years ahead of the world. What the media tells you about China is very different. And when I came back, I really realized that India has no hope in manufacturing. Even today, it has no hope. Probably Thailand and Vietnam are much better. So in terms of stock markets or private equity investments, you go towards much more, which is much more either domestically oriented, or you go into the service side. It also gives you, so again in 2013, when I was backpacking, you get to know trends in society. So you kind of we really knew there's an interesting element happening in the world. We thought it would be kind of a left. There was a lot of discontentment in the world right from 2013. We thought it would be a kind of a left-wing revolution. By 2014, we knew it would be the other extreme. And very interestingly, two countries are always ahead of India or tag India. So there's Brazil, Turkey, and India. Whatever happens in each of these countries seems to happen in the next country in probably the next 2-3 months, right? Either it's politically, socially, or economically. So you get to know these trends and you start tracking them. So you kind of get much more wisdom into what it. Investments is always about people. And when you're backpacking, you're always sensing people, right? You don't have the data, you don't have the language. And that powered with meditation, it becomes a better judge of life itself. Your decisions, you become more decisive. At the same time, you become much more getting 90% right.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sridhar. Thanks for answering to that question. Quickly moving on to this one question we have from our participant Narayanan. He's asking, what's your inspiration for commencing this travel and therefore learning from it?
So the inspiration, in fact, one of the things is all these things started with meeting somebody and giving me an idea and me taking it on. So this travel started on two fronts. One, when I was in my 8th grade, I met a teacher called Professor Dave. I still remember her. And she used to teach geography, and she used to make us dream that we were in these places. And interestingly, our son had died in the 8th grade. And when you're 8th grade, you don't really understand death. And we went to kind of condole her, and we don't know what to do. And she looked at us and said, the best thing, and he died in a motorcycle accident in some race. And she said, when you die, you should have enough memories to console you in the ICU. I'm proud my son had done that. Second thing is, I met my current business partner, Girish Kulkarni, in 92. And he said, I am going, suddenly, I'm very close to him since campus. He's 2 years senior to me. And one day in 92, he said, I'm going backpacking. And I said, what do you mean by backpacking? He said, I'm going backpacking to Europe for a month. And that's how I got into what is now called backpacking. It's a different world that he's got married and 2 children. And he sees the world through me. But it's always the power of mentors and whatnot. And then when I started backpacking, I started realizing it's making me a better investor. I've confessed till 35, it was all about money. And I could realize that every time I want, I could get a multi-bagger at some point of time or the other. But now I think it's become a different story, right? It makes you a better human being. There's a lot of curiosity about the world. When you go to Antarctica, you get come back with certain experiences. The third thing is it also helps you live in the discomfort zone. So one is now addicted to living in the discomfort zone always. Sometimes it's too much of an addiction, but you're so comfortable in the discomfort zone. COVID hit. Within 10 days, I was ready and gone. Now this is the way I'm going to be leading my life. COVID got off, you again back to a different sense, right? So it's in a very interesting way, you become very, very flexible because you're always prepared for the unexpected. Did I answer your question?
I hope it did answer the question. We'll quickly move on to the next question. Question from Suresh, our attendee. With so much travel, how do you work and manage your finances?
I was expecting that question. It's never about money. It's never about money. Okay, it's always the time that you time is always at premium. Okay, money is important, and money is extremely important. But money is a very interesting animal. If you have more than what you require, it is dangerous. If you have less than what you require, it is dangerous. So you need to define what is required as a minimum. And then I'm lucky I reached that point at about 34, 35. And I never thought that having more is also a problem. Now today, it's like when you have more, then it creates more problem, right? You have to invest and whatnot. The second thing is money has never been my goal. Okay, it has always been a benchmark of what value I would do, and that kind of helped me. And the third thing I strongly believe, right, is that if you're good to people, life will give back whatever it is. So probably wrong person to ask me about money, because at 19, 21, I was in senior management and I was in private equity. But my answer would have been the same if I had not started that. Money always will come to you if you're delivering value. And if you use it properly, money is always enough. And if you use it not properly, money will never be enough. But very important. I don't want to communicate a wrong message that money is not required. Money is always required. Okay. It's good. It's like, and I've been in situations, as I told of my life story, when there was no money. Very important. But when you start making it your goal, then that's where the problem starts. It has never been my goal. People will always, I've never negotiated any of my terms. And again, even in my investments, people get very X-oriented or return-oriented. In all my investments, both stock as well as private equity, when I make the investment, there will be an hypothesis of the investment. After that, like with backpacking, it's the journey. Okay, and then when the journey ends, that's only when I look back and say whether it meant, and then I take the learning from that. Third, I think failures are very important. I didn't talk about them. You always have to fail. And after that, when you recover from failure, it's like then you realize you will get there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sridhar. We'll just take one last question from the audience. So a quick question coming in from Tarun, who's asking, on the topic of investing, what are the pros and cons of having a startup in India? Do you think we should be global citizens and not be sentimentally glued to India? Are you also optimistic on the Indian story?
Multiple vectors of the question, and I'm also long COVID fogged, unfortunately. Let me answer the last one first, and then we'll move on to the questions. Am I optimistic about India? Interesting question. I'm very optimistic of the women of India. I'm very optimistic of the people of India who are not in tier 1, tier 2 places. And I do spend a lot of time in impact. I recently came from Bihar, in Jammu in Bihar. I work with lower income kids. Absolutely optimistic. I think not only India, the world is in a safe hands and hearts and souls. I believe that the next 10 years are going to be tough across the universe, across the world, and it's also going to be tough on India on various fronts. But I always believe India is a very interesting country. For 5,000 years, it has produced 6 religions, each of them pacifist, and it has always produced people who will bring and get a different series of thoughts into the world. India is the only country that could produce a Gandhi. And I'm strongly optimistic that this time again, after 10 years, there will be a Gandhi born to again rescue the world and humanity. And this time it's definitely going to be the women. There's so much power that's there in these women in Jammu or in Ladakh or whatnot. So I think I'm very confident that India will again come back. But 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to be we're going in a very hard time. So we just have to prepare for that and start doing that. The second question was on startups. It's a mixed feeling. I think India has got 1.4 billion people. It's got the Jugaad mentality. India is a country of entrepreneurs. Everybody is a trader, right? Otherwise, 400 million traders in the country. And on the road, you've seen so many entrepreneurs, right? India is an extremely good country to do business, but I'm a little bit disappointed with this unicorn thing. I think India has a lot of opportunity to make the galle wala business, where you can make money like the grocer out there. You can make money every year and go about. All this fascination of the bigger businesses is I think, misfelt. And I spend a lot of time doing micro entrepreneurship or medium entrepreneurship. India has an amazing story to tell the world in services. So I kind of usually look at the intellectual side of the services. And yesterday I was looking at something in robotics. There's an interesting amount happening in AI and data. Manufacturing, I have my doubts. It's going to be very difficult. If you go to Shunde, you have a F1 race of trucks running to the port. And I don't think it's ever going to happen in India. Modern manufacturing probably will be selective, but that's my humble opinion. It could be changed. What was the second? The global citizen bit? Oh, very interesting. That was the third question, right? Getting spiritual, right? I always believe nations are a creation of humankind. Okay, nations, religions, everything is the creation of human powers, and they're always done by politicians and priests. I believe in one world. I've always believed in one world. And in India is important because it's a phenomenal land. But India is not the best. There are a lot of things that you have to learn from every culture. And if you, as like with religion, if you're saying that you're living a life's journey, and we are a pool of human beings, I think nationality, race, your gender preferences, all that vanishes. I think each of us is in a journey. So to my mind, I don't like nations, even though I keep counting nations. It's a very ironic bit. I kind of like Let It Be and Imagine are my favorite songs. Let It Be because it's about Mother Mary, and Imagine is because that's the world I really dream about as a backpacker. But division is very good. It's like colors of the world, right? You should have divisions like competition, like India and Pakistan and whatnot in sports. You don't start deciding to kill it. It's a competition to be the best. So in that sense, you always have to think global from a humanistic point of view. But yeah, these all divisions help in a lot of ways, just make life much more fun. But if they start dividing people and creating violence and whatnot, I think going the wrong track. And you should, my biggest interesting experience when you go to Serengeti, right, and wildlife, they don't recognize the border. They're crossing from one country to the other. Or look at COVID, right? So it doesn't matter. These are all humans creation.
So thanks, Sridhar. In the interest of time, we'll have to restrict more questions. But
yeah, one more question, Ruben.
Yes.
We can still take a question. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, sure. I was getting the Deepak. Thank you. We have a participant, Reshma Naram, who's wanting to ask a question. Reshma, if you could quickly unmute yourself and go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Thanks, Ruben. Sridhar, first of all, thank you very much for a lovely session where, I did not fathom that, when we speak about PE and investments and earnings, it's interspersed. Also, you clearly brought out the importance of even spirituality, values, ethics. So it's a beautiful, it was great to know about the beautiful balance that we can maintain. And even in, when you have to be aggressive and yet manage it with ethics at the background. So that was lovely for me. My question is to you, Sridhar, is that, but in the real world out there, in the corporate world out there, people typically associate success with, it's all about me, putting the other person down, politics, etc., etc. And all this thing about giving and rewarding the right people. And typically we've seen, the good guy finishes last. So what's your view about this dichotomy that we see?
Super interesting. And Ruben, I'm happy to go on. So I don't have anything after this. So I can see a couple of hands raised. Interesting question, Reshma. I don't know whether I have the right answer. I will give you my individual answer, and every person has to have their own answer. For me, even when I set out of IIM Ahmedabad at 21, I met a professor called Anil Gupta who had told me to keep my boundaries of my ethics very clear. Okay. And the boundaries of ethics were 2 or 3 fold. One is the money is not important. Money is the benchmark. The second thing was integrity extends not beyond money, even to the words. Okay. So you'll always find me transparent, sometimes brutally honest, saying that this is what I will share. Over the years, I've kind of tuned it down, saying that if people don't ask me, I will not share my opinion. But God forbid, if somebody has asked my opinion, they will get it what it is, regardless of what they say. The third thing is talking about the desire for optics, right? And I'll share my experiences with you. I've been lucky to have been born an introvert. I hate the spotlight. Okay, I used to hate birthday. Lucky I didn't have money for birthdays, but birthdays I would I always hate. It's a different thing that I understood how people will enjoy birthdays. So I put in a system that I wish quite a lot of my few friends on their birthday with a very specific email. But that helped me from keeping the spotlight away. Okay, I hate the spotlight. So I had to ensure that, and obviously I'm very ambitious and very selfish and competitive. So I had to figure out my own way of being successful. Uh, uh, but in a very interesting way, in fact, one of 2004 and 5, I'd gone into a large corporate in one of my entrepreneurial journeys, and I quickly realized that I'm not meant for corporate life. Okay. And so I kind of took a backseat, took a 2 year sabbatical, removed all the chinks in my armor. I should be very, very spotlight shy. I realized that I had to become more spotlight friendly as long as the impact goes. So that is that kind of helped me. Last but not the least, but very interestingly, and this again got clarified by my impact work. I work with an organization called Manzil, and this guy, Ravi Gulati runs it, and I usually spend a day a year going there. And I was in session with the kids of drivers, and the first thing I asked, the question asked was, Sridhar Bhaiya, aap bahut successful rakhte ho. What is the definition of success? Okay, and still remember this was 2004 when I was hungry. I was like on the top of the world, number 2 in a large insurance company, going to be number 1, 35,000 people. And I kind of took a step back. That guy was actually a guy called Neeraj Arya, who runs Neeraj Arya and Kabir Cafe today. He's a singer. And I kind of said, Bhai Saab, ye socha nahi hai humne. If I find the answer at the end of the year, end of the session, I will answer it to you. And I'm still proud of what I answered at the end of the session. I said, I am successful because when I sleep in 30 seconds. I'm very proud that I've given my best to the world. I've done my best as to what I need to do. And when I get up, I'm actually up in 30 seconds, hungry to give to the best of the world, bet my best. And that's been my definition of success. The only time I've lost sleep is when my ethics have got questioned. And there have been times when those things, and you are as a human being, obviously, I'm not a monk. You make mistakes. And people know that I really lose my sleep. Over the years, the money mistakes don't happen. The political mistakes don't happen. But you do mistakes in terms of the way you interact. Sometimes you have to be rude even as an investor. And sometimes you have to be unpopular and you kind of go a little more above extreme. Then you feel sad when you have hurt people unintentionally. With experience, you realize that you never hurt people intentionally. Very rarely that you do that. Have I answered your question, Reshma? It's a tough one, but it again comes back to figuring out your boundaries and not exceeding them at any cost.
You answered it very beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you, Reshma. We can take another question, Sridhar.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Sure. Can you please share how meditation has helped you in your journey?
That's probably my best journey to life, right? How many human beings are there who have done 26 years of meditation, and the people who have done it are either abusing that in the form of becoming gurus or I don't know where, right? It gives you some interesting powers of connecting to the universe. And on the other extreme, the humans I go to Ashoka to teach the children, the kids can't even keep their eyes closed for 5 seconds. And my biggest success factor with Ashoka is at my last class, the entire class shut their eyes for 11 minutes. And I said, wow, I have done what I have to do. But meditation is amazing. It's a beautiful journey. You have to be very disciplined about it. But what it helps me 2 or 3 things, right? One is when I meditate, I'm with myself, right? And I know that, and it's very interesting. Maya is a very interesting concept. The only reality is in your head. and it helps you get connected to your own thoughts and whatnot. Second, it helps you see patterns. Okay, and patterns not only investments, it's also human beings, voices. There is a interesting bit of how I can track people when I'm doing investments. I trap body language. I will just walk across and I will know when people are in problem or celebrating or lying something from me. So that's the second bit. Third thing is that it makes you very humble. You're going to die. So I do this entire meditation called the death meditation by Osho. I've done it about 500 times. It's a 54 minutes the meditation. I'm still not lasted. I've never been able to hear the entire 55. At some point, I will snap into something called nirvana. It's a different state, and when I get up, I know that I've detoxified, and it's just words. And then you get back and you're connected to the universe. Fourth, I think everything is energy, right? And I never used to believe in Reiki 2, Reiki 3. Reiki was okay, you're covering your own energy. But I was studying this something called EEG, which is like when one of my family members were epileptic, and suddenly I realized even thoughts are a form of electrical energy, and the universal truth of life is no energy, law of conservation of energy, right? And even rock has energy. Put water into it, it becomes plant. Okay, so even thoughts are energy. So there have been multiple instances where it's like very interestingly, people will I will be calling somebody and people will say, "Arey, did I call you? I was thinking of you." So it's a very interesting power, but at the same time, you have to ensure that you don't misuse it. And I'm glad I've been in a journey where I don't have to misuse it. But it can be really badly misused. But beautiful journey, beautiful journey. If you've not started on it, it's a beautiful journey. It took us a lot of practice, discipline, a lot of experimentation, but it can gets you honest into your energy. And the practical implication, very interestingly, I've run 18 marathons. I've only run only one 21-kilometer practice outside it. I always run my marathon at land and I run. And in fact, just this evening, I was telling my wife I'm going to run 21 kilometers, and she said, "No, you are not going to do it." I put on 18 kgs in COVID. The way I run is my body is so tuned. I just have to visualize that entire run, and I will actually start running the entire race. So even in the marathon of life, the same thing helps. If you get too if your mind gets too cluttered, you just close your eyes and let your thoughts flow.
Thank you, Sridhar. There's one more question.
No problem at all. Don't think. I think people who remain are the ones who are interested. I'm very surprised that 26 of them still remaining. I think most of them are paid employees, or Deepak has paid somebody some pizzas at the end of it. So
We can go on. I think the only what remains before the end is a vote of thanks, and I'm not sure how I'll summarize that. But let's go with the last question. Maybe the last one, maybe not.
So the next question, Sridhar, is what
I have Moana Rangan who's kept his
That's
hand
right.
up.
Yes. That's where I'm getting to. What's the mantra of the mentor, and how do you identify one in every stage of life?
That's a very interesting question. I discovered by accident. Okay, and this is serendipity working, and then when you start seeing a pattern, you start chasing it. Okay, so uh, I was 19 when I entered IIM Ahmedabad, and it's a raw age, right? I realized that I was still a teenager. I would have discovered the meaning of teenager only about a couple of years back. I'd always thought after 18 you're no longer a teenager, you're an adult. So it and I remember I was in IIM Ahmedabad, and I got out of IIM Ahmedabad, got into ICICI. Within 6 months, I was in the strategy side. So I've always been dealing with board of directors and whatnot. So the only way I had to learn was just by watching other people and finding people who will give me advice on, right? So I used to, even in campus, all my batchmates, I would just look at people, and I was introvert, right? I would look at people, and two things I used to learn even then, very practically. One is the good things that I should do, and more importantly, the bad things that I should not do. So I've learned a lot from mistakes about the bad things. I've always been humble, so I always will say I don't know. I have syllabus, and I'll go and ask people and get the expertise. So a lot of things happened accidentally. Like I got into private equity because one of my batchmates said to give that idea to me. Started backpacking because of a reason. I joined ICICI because of my current business partner whom I met in my first three months of ICICI. So initially, I met Shika Sharma at 19, who kind of prepared me for 30 at the age of 30. So interestingly, it was accidental process, but suddenly I realized that there's some method to the madness. Most importantly, you have to recognize mentors are coming into your life. You have to add value to them. and ensure that they're invested into your cycle. So quickly at about 21, I realized this is the way to do it. I used to appoint mentors for various activities of my life. And even today, December, I go back to all my mentors and tell them this is my life story, this is rambling, and they will give me something in life. So it's been very, in a lot of ways, it's been structured. So, and so there's an age path to it. So at 18, somebody came and told me what to do at 35. At 35, somebody came to do at came at 50. 50, I was suddenly I found Ujjwal Thakkar. And I was not intending to do anything. And Ujjwal Thakkar, whom I met in LMP, after whom Ujjwal Impact Advisors is there, and he's the doyen of the impact sector. He came suddenly and said, "Will you coach me?" And the first interaction was, "Ujjwal, you're 70. How the hell will I coach you?" And suddenly I realized, boss, this is serendipity. Some guy is coming and telling me what to prepare for 70. And I pivoted dramatically in the last 3 years. Because he taught me what I need to be at 70. I used to have 2 avatars at that point of time. Actually 3. There was to be backpacking, Suyash, and myself. Now I have 7 avatars running at the same time. But I knew at 70 you need to have a portfolio. So a lot of it is structured. If you don't not structured about your mentors, you're a disaster. So you need to know what you don't know, whether it's in terms of age or in terms of sectors. I also have ensured in my friends there are always people who are very honestly fond of me. And very interestingly, even if I make Facebook posts where I use some wrong territory, there I usually get hammerings. Okay, or if I behave a little bit, and of course you are a human being, right? You can be sometimes getting arrogant. And when you're a backpacker, you're really exceeding the boundaries. You don't even know what you're writing. But I've been extremely blessed to have friends who will immediately pick up the call and very nicely saying you're exceeding boundaries. And that's been a very, very interesting ride. Lastly, I think everybody is a mentor. So I always, the age is never a problem. If I think my best mentors have been the 18 years and 20 years daughters of my batchmates. They teach me a lot in life. So and a lot of them, they are the ones who are mentoring me to be young. So it's structured at the same time, allowing serendipity to come in. But once somebody comes in, you ensure that you add value to them, and then they are invested in your life. Then your life becomes much more easier because they take care of the downside. Then you can run for the upside. Have I answered your question?
Lovely. Yes, sir. Thank you, Sridhar. Thanks for giving a new dimension, to identify your mentor. I really love your answer of being humble and, look up to them and be open and, get their inputs and add value to them. It's excellent, way of getting a mentor. In fact, that's what I was also thinking, that every stage, in life, you need someone or the other, because you're not a human, a complete human until, another human, in a fullest form. So I think that makes every individual to learn more about a person in order to move ahead in life. So that was really interesting. Thank you so much. I loved your session and your answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sridhar. I think we're done with the question and answer round. I'll now hand it back to Deepak.
Thanks, Ruben. Thanks, Sridhar, and thanks, the lovely audience. I was wondering that we probably need to have a season 2, given the number of questions that were coming in. I don't know really how to summarize all of this. You had your item number in the beginning, you had nuggets of wisdom all through, and then you had profound insights. So I would really wonder how to call this anything, but given your videos that you started and ended with, I'm tempted to compare it with the Song of Fire and Ice, because I've been watching Game of Thrones 10 years too late. Just like Game of Thrones, this session was action-packed with something happening all the time. It's difficult to really capture all the wisdom that you've shared, Sridhar. I'm sure the audience has gained a lot. Not just wisdom, but as you said, inspiration and motivation to think about the future too. I struck me quite a bit through your session about some of the nuggets that you shared with us about travel, busting myths, and murdering biases. Also, your remarkable thing about always broadcasting your mistakes, but never repeating them. Some of these things, the lines will stay with us. But probably more than that are some of the profound insights which might propel us to think a little bit more. about what is our definition of success. And with the awesome, inspiring people you meet, how do you really interpret and use that for inspiration? I was also struck by how you said and correlated all of those images that you shared with us to saying these are people who want to give back joy and life. So thanks for that, Sridhar. I'm sure there is a lot for each of us. And as you saw, some of our audience has spoken up and shared their insights, shared their feedback back with you. So thanks to all of you being a very patient and engaged audience. I know we've gone way beyond time. That's why I was thinking of a season 2, a la Game of Thrones. But I know this is far more wise, positive than the serial I'm comparing it to.
No,
So
sir.
thanks for that.
All divine grace, and hopefully next time it's an in-person session. I've suddenly realized these sessions are good when you have COVID constraints. These sessions are much more fun without online.
Yes.
Is no, it's like you're struggling with a lot of stuff.
Indeed.
So thanks a lot, Honor,
Thank-
and divine grace. Enjoy the weekend. Make every nanosecond of life worth it. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks everyone. And I trust if any of you would like to share any feedback with us after this, please do reach out. If you want to connect with Sridhar anytime, I'm sure he's open to do
Yeah.
that too.
So Ruben, you can
Yes,
share
Ruben.
my stuff. Okay. So no problems. As long as it's a qualified audience, no problems. Except my cell number, which I'll share as you do on the email. Yeah. You can share my
Thank you,
email ID and
everyone.
my. Thank you. Thanks, Milky.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shanu. Thanks, Ruben.
Good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye bye. See you.
Was
Bye
it
bye.
Thank you
Enjoy.
so much, Sridhar.
Bye.
Bye.